Main question then this week was sent in by Liam Hawkins 1. He says, who would you say has been the most important player for Man City this season? Now, last week we graded every Premier League manager, and I wanted to open Liam's question up a little bit more to every team, because I thought that format kind of worked pretty well, even though we did forget West Ham. Sorry to all the West Ham fans out there that were commenting last week. They sat for an hour-long show, and then we forgot to do David Moyes. He probably would have got like an A. I'm not going to lie to you. But let's go in reverse order this time. Last time we started with the A's, let's start with the W's this time. And we may as well start with West Ham, because I do feel guilty about last week, Hamster.
Yeah, shout out to my mate Sean back home. Very supportive, watches a lot of football daily content. And he just texts me Sunday about midday saying 60 minutes and no West Ham. And at this point, I still hadn't clocked that we missed David Moyes out. And I was like, what?
I blame Henry.
What is he talking about? Yeah. Yeah, none of us realised, did we? Shows how much we actually care about West Ham. But we should, because they're having a fantastic season. Yeah, let's kick things off with them then. And it's a pretty easy job for me at current, with Souček in such good form, isn't it? 28 appearances, 8 goals. He's the top goal scorer in the side. He's played the most minutes this term, along with Rice and Cresswell. Now, this isn't me saying I think Souček is the best player at West Ham, because I think that is probably Declan Rice, right? From a technical standpoint, most tackles and interceptions in the squad as well. First in the Premier League for interceptions, actually, in that regard. And first for successful dribbles, which is pretty insane. 87.5% completion rate. Now, he's probably only trying one a game, but that's pretty reminiscent of Moussa Dembele in his heyday at Spurs, isn't it? But yeah, let me quickly go back to Souček, put some more shine on him, because vital to the way that Moyes plays, right? He's incredible at defending his own box. Such a presence in the opposition's box. He gives players like Antonio or Pablo Fornals a reference point when he becomes the sort of central striker. They can play off of him in wide areas. So yeah, I really like him. Maybe a little bit limited, not the rangiest midfielder, but Moyes, he's probably the first name on the team sheet for Big Dave, isn't he?
Definitely. Hard to disagree with you here. I think if I was going for West Ham's most important player this season, I would pick Souček. Although I think there is shouts for, Cresswell's had a really solid season. Not enough to go to the Euros, I don't think, but very, very good alongside Dawson. I think has been really important back there as well. Look, let's not spend too much time. It just is Souček, right, Pat?
Yeah, I'm happy with Souček, but I mean, equally, it could be Soufal, it could be Rice. Cresswell is such a big part of their ball progression, and has 7 assists as well, which, I mean, pretty spectacular. But Jared Bowen, Antonio, everybody in that squad pretty much having a great season. So I'm happy with whoever, and I think Souček probably deserves it.
Yeah, we'll go Souček then. All right, let's move on to Wolves. We're back into sort of alphabetical order now. Obviously, we included West Ham, which we've forgotten. But I think it's hard to look past Pedro Neto being their most important. I don't think I've been that impressed by Wolves in any game I've watched them this season. So one of the few standouts, I would say, amongst what's been a pretty hit and miss season, especially after the Jimenez injury. Yeah, as a young 21-year-old, 5 goals, 5 assists this season. They'll be absolutely delighted with that. I feel like this has been his sort of breakout campaign, and Wolves won't be able to keep hold of him for an awful lot longer. I think maybe one more season of Pedro Neto, and then he'll move on. Any other shouts here, Pat?
No, not really. I mean, you could maybe go for one of their defenders, but to be honest, I don't think anybody else in the squad is having a very good season. Pedro Neto is one of the outstanding young players in the Premier League. In a side which really, doesn't have a lot going forward, and where he's expected to do an awful lot by himself. He and Podence have both been pretty good. Other than that, I mean, maybe you want to think about one of the defenders, because the defence is still kind of okay. But no, I don't really particularly rate anybody else in that squad on the season they're having.
I'm going to put some shine on Ruben Neves. 6 goal involvements. Really? Yeah, 3.2 shots and key passes per 90. Still, it's got to wrap them away, innit? And I think 5th most tackles won in the Premier League, ranks 10th for passes into the final third. So in many ways, he's got his eye back in. I think his distribution from a relatively deep position has been good. It's sprung an awful lot of counter-attacks that, Pedro Neto is on the other end of, right? And, at one point it looked like him and Moutinho can play on the same side. I think Moutinho probably deserves a shout out as well for continuing to play at that higher level at 34 now? He's racked up an awful lot of minutes, very consistent, very technically sound, really smart football player. But yeah, Ruben Neves, is starting to look like the player he was 18 months ago. Did have a down campaign last season, but when I watch Wolves, he's sort of at the heart of some of their better elements of play. But yeah, I think he's been better.
Yeah, I think let's go Pedro Neto flat out there. If there's any Wolves fans that disagree, let us know in the comments below. But especially without Jimenez, it's much more easy to key on to Pedro Neto as well. So I think he's had a really exceptional season. As for West Brom, this is going to be a tough candidate to pick. I'm not going to lie. I mean, Sam Johnston stands out, doesn't he, if he gets that England call up? I just scratching around for a West Brom player. I've been very impressed by Conor Gallagher, but he's going to go back to Chelsea, isn't he? Any other candidates here?
No.
It's been dry, isn't it, for West Brom? I'm not going to lie.
I quite like Diagne. Since he's arrived, I think he's been pretty good. I think he and Maitland-Niles have been good additions to the squad, actually. But yeah, Johnson, they'd be even worse off without Johnson.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we are quite dismissive of West Brom, and rightly so, because I will actively try and avoid watching them. But there probably is some West Brom fans at home who want us to do some lip service to the likes of Kyle Bartley. I mean, when I saw Kyle Bartley at Rangers, I didn't think here's a guy that's going to be playing in the Premier League, captaining a team, even if it is for a relegation threatened side, in his early to mid 30s, and he's been okay, hasn't he? He's been a threat from set pieces. I think he's got 3 goals. I mean, I don't want to say dominant in the air, but he's okay in the air. 5.6 clearances a match, which I think is a team high. So maybe a team coming up might want to think about adding him to their defensive roster. But that's probably the most shine I can put on anyone from the Hawthorns.
Yeah. All right. So should we agree on Sam Johnson then?
I think,
because without him, I think they would be down with Sheffield United, wouldn't they? Yeah. Okay. Let's just move on swiftly from West Brom to Tottenham. And I think this is the most obvious one we've had so far, probably with Harry Kane.
Nah, Wolves was more obvious. Come on.
Oh, yeah, Pedro Neto, I suppose. But it is Harry Kane, isn't it? 42 goal involvements in 37 games, Pat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Harry Kane has arguably been the best attacker in the league this season. The only thing that makes this not a foregone conclusion is that Son has also been excellent. But there's basically nobody else. I mean, I like Reguilon. Reguilon's been okay. And Ndombele has been having a decent season, but nobody else has been particularly impressive in that side. Højbjerg has really, really gone off the boil lately. But then again, I kind of feel like Højbjerg is one of those guys who, when the team's playing well, he plays well and he gets credit. When the team's playing badly, he plays badly and he gets criticism. But given how they're having quite a poor season, but their 2 forwards are both absolutely outstanding. And I think that kind of gives them extra credit and should mean extra criticism for Mourinho as well.
Yeah, because if their forwards were just good rather than world class, I don't know where they'd be right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's massive positive, isn't it? I think Son's injury isn't as serious as it seems. He could well be back this weekend or at least next midweek. So that's a huge positive for Tottenham towards the back end of the season, just being able to keep Harry Kane fit. I really hope Kane can continue his fitness going into the Euros. I'm panicking. I'm worried about England players starting to go down because the Premier League standard feels like it's dropping week by week because players are getting so tired. And a lot of the English talent in the league starting to pick up little niggly injuries. So fingers crossed Kane isn't injured going into the Euros, because at the moment he is on absolute fire. His finishing is just outrageous. Whenever I watch him and he's in the penalty box, it's a goal. So yeah, I'll give it to Kane. Southampton, this is probably a tough one, Southampton, because no outstanding candidate in their squad, but quite a lot of sort of good individuals, but no actually properly smashers.
Yeah, it's a little bit bizarre as well that instinctively I would go to probably the centre-half partnership, when they've actually been the end of some whoopings this campaign, haven't they? But I do think Jan Bednarak deserves some credit. I think he's played 700 more minutes or so than Vestergaard as well, which is probably what would edge it for me in Bednarak's favour. An awful lot of clearances, over 3 tackles and interceptions, which they are quite active as a defensive partnership, aren't they? They do defend quite high, sometimes to their own downfall. But Stuart Armstrong, I would probably go for, actually. I tweeted about him the other day. He does a little bit of everything. He's not a specialist in any regard, but puts in a shift defensively. That is a great ball carrier, actually, underrated. And I think he springs an awful lot of counters or quick attacks for Southampton. And there's a man. You know, we'll talk about Harry Kane's got a thwack. So is Stuart Armstrong when he can get hold of it. I think 7 goal involvements, leads the side for shot creating actions. I think you probably do well to find a better candidate than Stuart Armstrong. You know, who's gonna lift the Euro 2021 trophy.
I just don't think it can be a defender. If they've conceded 51 goals this season, I think it's the second most in the league.
It is the second most in the league.
At best, I would probably go James Ward-Prowse. And I still don't think he's been exceptional. I think without his set-piece delivery, then they would probably be in a relegation scrap, though. I think this is a pretty unexceptional squad.
Yeah, crazy with James Ward-Prowse that, like you say, 12 goal involvements, deserves his place in this conversation, but I think it'd be pretty easy to upgrade him, Pat.
Yeah, he's not very good. Like, I mean, he's got like one thing that he can do. Like, his defensive output has gone up since Hasenhüttl has been there, but it's still not great. This to me is just like a team that's like, they're a system team. And I think the only players who really have a little bit of inspiration in the side are the forwards. Like, I think Che Adams and Danny Ings are both pretty good. Adams is a little bit streakier, but he's also younger. So, I mean, I'd like to say Ings, but he's been out a little bit lately. I'd still think I'd go for him, though. He's like the one guy in this team that I think is super talented. Everybody else, I think, is just like a bloke who will stand in the place that Hasenhüttl tells him to.
Yeah, I think with Ings, I feel like he's been out for longer than he actually has. Right,
he's played like 1,500 minutes or something, so he's missed a decent portion. I do understand it, and I mean, like Ward-Prowse has, I think, got more goal involvements than anyone in the squad. But I mean, he takes set pieces, and a lot of his assists are because other people have scored them. Like, I mean, that's not really.
Those set pieces are outrageous, though.
They are, but that is all he is. Like, he's like Morten Gamps Pedersen or the other guy.
What a player!
Who used to do it? Who was the other set piece? Seb Larsson.
Mate, Premier League years.
I thought you were going to say Charlie Adam then. I thought you were going to say Charlie Adam.
No, Premier League years finest, Morten Gamps Pedersen.
No, because at least James Ward-Prowse will do the odd other thing. Charlie Adam was useless in every regard except for set pieces.
Remember when Fergie said he paid like 15 mil for Charlie Adams?
Lovely bloke, though. Adam on the Football Social.
Well, he would be paying for his corners alone. That's it.
Yeah. All right. So, are we going to come to a decision on this one? It's between Stuart Armstrong and James Ward-Prowse, I suppose. Pat, you got the decider?
I'll go Armstrong. Okay, I'm always slightly surprised by Armstrong. Like, he's really nice runner with the ball. He's quite elegant. I like that about him.
All right, let's move on to Sheffield United then. I mean, we are struggling at the moment. We're in the teams that don't have any outstanding players. Sheffield United. Where do we start?
It's got to be Golders, mate. It's got to be David McGoldrick. My last pick in draft. And he's racked up the most points out of all my forwards. 7 goal involvements. That's practically, you know, if we adjust that for how Sheffield United are, he's practically on 30.
Mate, there's only 3 players in the Sheffield United squad that have scored more than 1 goal. And Jayden Bogle's got 2, and that's one of them.
Jayden Bogle's played like 700 minutes as well. Well, I mean, Ethan Ampadu, I think, will have progressed as a result of this loan spell, right? So for him, at least, that's a positive over 4 defensive actions. And quite clearly, you know, he's become more accustomed to playing in a back 3, playing in a back 4. So maybe it will be a little bit more tactically versatile as a result. But I'm really clutching at straws here. I think it probably is McGoldrick for me. The poor man's Berbatov. What a touch he's got.
Oh, don't ever say that again. Don't ever say that again. That is
I'm going to change my Twitter bio to David McGoldrick, the poor man's Berbatov.
Oh, my Lord. Happy with David McGoldrick, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. Like, David McGoldrick last season had, like, one of the worst finishing seasons in Premier League history. Like, his underlying numbers were pretty good, but he just couldn't finish for whatever reason. So I'm kind of glad that he's, like, got a little bit of respectability back this year. You know, every time I watch them, which is not often, but every time I watch them, I think Baldock is actually all right at right back. Like, I think he's quite an interesting technical player. But they are just garbage. You know, there's no 2 ways about it.
I don't know if it's a lazy comparison, but Baldock sort of reminds me of Trippier in that, like, he's got a nice technique going forward. Like, his crosses are all pretty spot on. Ability to beat a man, little burst of pace. But I think the fullbacks have suffered this term, haven't they? Well, I mean, the whole team has, but Bulldogs stood out for me more last season, where maybe their system hadn't been solved by other sides quite as much. But yeah, should we just go with McGoldrick?
Yeah, let's go McGoldrick and let's move on to Newcastle.
Bloody hell,
they're
this
coming
is
thick
rough,
and fast,
innit?
these teams at the moment, aren't they? But this one I think does have a more outstanding candidate. I think it's very difficult to look past Callum Wilson. I think without Callum Wilson, they would be dead and buried right now. 15 goal involvements. And there's been games, at least like I think about Everton away, where he totally ran Everton off the park single-handedly, effectively, and he has been a genuinely good signing for Newcastle in what can only really be described as like recruitment hell for the last like 3 or 4 years up on Tyneside. So I would say Callum Wilson for me is got to be the name here.
It can't be anyone else. It just can't be. 15 goal involvements playing for this Steve Bruce side. That's pretty insane, considering he's only having 2 shots per night as well.
And he's only played 1,800 minutes.
Yeah, he's had to be super clinical. So not only is he playing well, he's had to like play as the best version of himself after a couple of down years at Bournemouth, right? So he's raised his game on a personal level, and yeah, it's like you said, it's probably just about keeping his team in touching distance.
If they go down, which I do think is still a genuine possibility this season, he could be in for a move. Like, even though he's only been there for a year, I think another Premier League team would still try and pick him up.
Imagine where Brighton would be with a player like Callum Wilson. 11th.
I'm sure he would be their top scorer.
Yeah, so I think, clubs in that, you're right, clubs in that sort of area would definitely snap him up for what?
Yeah, and Newcastle are now in that position where all 3 of their star players, Callum Wilson, and Saint-Maximin, Almiron, they're all injured. So they are now in huge problems. And Joe Linton needs to dig them out of a hole. Quickly, Pat.
There's nothing there, man. This is an easy one. I think we could just move on.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Man United then. Probably still a bit of an easy one. It's obviously Bruno Fernandes.
Is it becoming harder though, Joe? Do you think Luke Shaw's becoming equally as important to the side as Bruno?
Definitely. I think Luke Shaw is as important right now to Man United as Bruno Fernandes. But Bruno, because of the first half of the campaign, just has to take home the award. Like, his numbers are still just freakish for an attacking midfielder. 16 goals, 10 assists in the Premier League. I think he's created the most chances of anyone in the league, potentially up there. Top 3, definitely. Luke Shaw has definitely created the most chances of any defender in the league. He's been outstanding. But more importantly than Luke Shaw's chance creation is his ball carrying. When he carries the ball past players, and his off-the-ball movement is essential to Manchester United, because our right flank doesn't exist. So it is literally just Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford at times. But no, I'll still give it Bruno. I love Bruno. I think this one's quite an easy one, Pat.
Yeah. No competition. People are talking about Luke Shaw being good, but he's not been like best left back in the world good. Whereas Bruno Fernandes is like one of the best attacking midfielders in the world right now. Yeah.
I think a lot of the praise that Luke Shaw's getting is with his like past seasons in mind, rather than him being like truly exceptional this season.
He has genuinely been great this year.
He's been very, very good, but I think a lot of the praise is received a little boost. Because I think it takes into account where he's come from, which was like obscurity at certain points, wasn't it? Like you wouldn't have noticed if he was on United's bench or not in seasons gone by. So yeah, fair play to him for his little renaissance as well.
All right, so Bruno for United. Man City's a little bit more of a difficult one. I still think it's Ilkay Gundogan, but it is a bit more close.
I think when Kevin De Bruyne is fit, he can't not be the most important player. Like, okay, across the course of this season, yeah, maybe it is Gundogan just because of how many minutes they've both clocked up, right? And KDB's sort of persistent injuries. But what's that? Is it 16 goal involvements in 21 starts? Just ridiculous. When he's played, he's still the fulcrum of the side, isn't he? João Cancelo is definitely the most improved. We've already put a lot of shine on him, haven't we?
Yeah.
And a lot of people will be screaming Ruben Diaz at the screen right now, but I think me and Pat were in agreement a couple of weeks ago when we said that if Ruben Diaz is an exceptional individual, but you drop Laporte back in there, and I think you barely notice at this point in time, given how well that system is working.
Agreed. I think it's Cancelo, to be honest. I think that I think Gundogan's had a great scoring season, but I think that without Gundogan, they'd have found another way to score. Like, it's not like Gundogan isn't like Callum Wilson. Whereas Cancelo is a huge part of the attacking passing and a huge part of the defensive solidity, and he does things that literally nobody else in the side can do. Like, he to me is like really the fulcrum of the team.
Oh, and let's let the comments decide this one then. If you're watching right now, would you pick Gundogan, KDB, Cancelo, or Diaz? Let us know in the comments below, because we've got a bit of a split vote on Manchester City's most important player right now. Let's go on to Liverpool then.
Easy.
Mo Salah.
Yeah,
on,
easy.
pal.
It has to be Mo Salah. Mo Salah's there. Apart from Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's actually played a more reserved role this season, Mo Salah's incredibly important to their ball progression game, like more than ever before. Like, he's dropping deep and linking play. Like, he's incredibly good at passing the ball into the penalty area, as in one of the best players in the world good. He works so hard doing that stuff. He also presses pretty hard. He presses better than most of the other players, like in the forward line. And he's done it all while getting, 20 goal involvements in a team that is struggling. Like, he's clearly the best player in the side.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's been a pretty down season for Sadio Mane. People might say Sadio Mane. I think it's been a down season for him, down season for Mino.
Yeah, the gap between 1 and 2 at Liverpool is just so big, isn't it?
Yeah, so big.
Which is no shame when one is Mo Salah. Like, I think every time I see Mo Salah, I still think, is this the best forward in the league? Like, probably. Like, he's amazing.
I would say Mo Salah, most important player for Liverpool. Let's move on to Leicester then. Yuri Tielemans, maybe hamster. Are we still going for someone else? Maybe still.
No, I'd go Yuri Tielemans.
Yeah.
I think over the course of this season, he might have started out slowly, I guess, but I think over the course of the season has just been excellent in a number of positions. Only Schmeichel has played more minutes than him, and I think Schmeichel's actually a little bit underrated too. He's having a fantastic season. I think his sort of post-shot XG is like +6 at the minute, which is second or third best in the league, and maybe second best of his career. So yeah, I think he deserves a little bit more shine. But Tielemans, 7th for passes into the final third league-wide, 9th for progressive passes, 13 shot creating actions per game, and puts up 5.1 defensive actions per game. And I know people might feel like I've just peppered them with some stats there. But the picture I'm trying to paint here is that he's a really well-rounded central midfielder. And yeah, he might have started in that 10 position or flirted with the idea of playing in a little bit more of an advanced role. But I think we're seeing the best of him in that double pivot with Wilfred Ndidi. And yeah, a gorgeous passer of the ball, super intelligent. And I think if you take him out of the side, maybe along with Vardy, although less so at the minute, that's when you'd feel the biggest ramifications performance-wise.
Yeah, it's a bit of shame for Ndidi this season, I think, because even when he's played, he still looked like an absolute demolition machine. But he's just struggling consistently now for fitness, isn't he? And other players that I would have as potential candidates, Harvey Barnes. Now he's going to miss the last half of the season. You think can't really consider him. Who we probably would have said James Justin had he not picked up a significant injury as well. And this is the first season that I can remember in quite some time for Leicester where I haven't thought, first name immediately pops into my head, Jamie Vardy.
Yeah. Well, it's been 14 games, 1 goal, right? And he's playing a little bit better with Kelechi Iheanacho. He's got a couple of assists in recent weeks. But yeah, I think injuries probably robbed Barnes, Vardy and Maddison of this title. And they might have been the 3 leading candidates halfway through the campaign.
All right. So Yuri for Leicester. Leeds then. Pato, do you want to take Leeds?
I think there are a couple of candidates here. I mean, it's probably Bamford or Rafinha. Like, Rafinha's had a really, really good season. Despite just driving, he's just a danger all the time, really. I think I might go for him. But I'm equally happy with Bamford.
I would probably go Rafinha as well. I think Luke Ayling deserves a shout here as well.
Yeah.
He's been outstanding this year for Leeds. Just so good at everything, Luke Ayling. I know he's not going to get an England call-up, but he must be in consideration, I think, for one of these upcoming squads, Luke Ayling. But yeah, I think Rafinha. Because of the fact he was only 16 mil, and I say only, it's still a lot of money, but from Rennes, I don't think people were expecting him to hit 10 goal involvements first season and have the impact he has had. And he just looks ready-made for a Champions League side. No offence to Leeds, but they'll do well to hold on to him this summer, I think.
Yeah, gorgeous footballer. Couldn't agree more. I think Liam Cooper deserves a shout out as well. Every time I watch him play, he's so full throttle, and has just got so much better under Bielsa, hasn't he? But I think Rafinha, really good shout.
Okay, let's move on to Fulham then. I think
quick one. Sorry, quick one. Thomas, I'm going to interrupt there. Quick one. Would you take Rafinha at Manchester United? Because obviously there have been rumblings in recent weeks to play on that right-hand side. Would you be happy with that post-summer?
I'll take any right winger in the world at the moment. Honestly, it's a black hole out there at the moment. Depends how much he costs. If Leeds want like 80 million, then probably not. Yeah. I think there's better value in Europe, but he's obviously an exceptional right winger. Fulham, I think it's Joachim Anderson.
I would go Areola.
Lookman, maybe Lookman. Areola.
Yeah.
Did you say?
He's got a shout. He really
because
does.
his save percentage is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's near enough 80%. He's played more minutes than any other Fulham player.
Yeah,
and while Scott Parker was sorting his shit out, like Areola has managed to keep them in a position where they may avoid relegation. Not single-handedly, but almost. So I'm going to go for Areola,
I think Lookman deserves a shout as well, by the way.
He does, but he did come into the team relatively late. But I suppose if they end up staying up, he'll be a very large factor in that. I mean, I also think the defensive midfielders are really good. Like, Ongisa is obviously by far the most talented, huge defensive output. Like, I mean, this is the thing about like guys like Anderson and Tosin. Like, they've been good, but you also see that they don't produce huge numbers of tackles and interceptions. And that is because of the players in front of them defending. It's kind of the opposite of what you were getting from like Fofana earlier in the season when Ndidi was out, where the guys in front of him doing no defensive work. And so he was having to do it all for them. You have kind of the opposite way around with Fulham, where like the midfielders are doing all the defensive work, so the players behind them can just like head balls away. Anderson's been good, don't get me wrong. I just think that like the solidity of that side is much more down to the centre of the park.
Okay, so should we all just say Areola then? I think Hampson's convinced me. Let's go to Everton then. Dominic Calvert-Lewin here, right? Any other arguments?
Not really. Richarlison, maybe.
We were at a bit of an impasse, weren't we, last week about Everton? We were like, Ancelotti's had a good season, but they're getting worse. And then that weekend they lost to Burnley. And I was like, yeah, we'll correct a bit an impasse. I genuinely don't know like where they're going to be come the end of the season. It could quite easily be 9th.
I mean, I think that's harsh.
No, but it's possible. He's not saying like they deserve that. He's saying that like they could be there, and like it's hard to argue that like their trajectory is good at the moment, right? Like it is because of injuries. Like no one says it's not, but like they have got steadily worse over the course of the season. You know, in the absence of Alan, in the absence of James, in the absence of Calvert-Lewin, like. But it does feel like this has to be Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison.
It kind of feels, it feels with Everton like here we go again, showing signs of promise, and then obviously they've never had a player like James Rodriguez, so maybe they've never been as dependent on one single player. But yeah, I'd be happy with Calvert-Lewin, but you've put Michael Keane forward a few times, Tomlinson, and I think he would have a case for this. Yeah, I do think he's had an
exceptional season. I said on We Need to Talk, I think he's probably been England's third best centre-back this season, and he'll definitely be on the plane to the Euros. I'd be so surprised if Gareth Southgate doesn't pick him. So I do think he's been vital to Everton, but I do think Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been more vital. Happy to go DCL for Everton. Crystal Palace.
No one. They're awful.
I don't even think you can say Zaha, can you? Because he's had so many injuries.
Yeah, maybe Eze, but like they're just not good. They're bad in every regard. They're bad at everything.
I'm going to go Cheku Kiyata, you know. A central midfielder. He's been converted to a centre half. But every time I watch him play, I'm like, he's playing well at centre half.
But the defence is terrible.
I think there's only 2 players that have played over 2,000 minutes in that squad, though. So a little bit like Newcastle. I don't think people realise how much like COVID and injuries have derailed Newcastle season at the end of the year. Like I certainly haven't given them that bandwidth until I watched McCubbin's Why Newcastle So Boring FD Explained, which was very well balanced. It's kind of been the same here, but yeah, Kiyate. I think imagine Kiyate being your player of the season. That's been a boring old season, hasn't it?
Surely Zaha's been more important than Kiyate. Like he's still got 11.
He's the top goal scorer, right? Yeah, but
It's not
But
good.
he's a top goal scorer. Does that mean most important player? Like some of the time, but who who's going to play
team?
centre half? If Kiai hadn't been so adept at that transition, who's going to play centre half? Like they
Roy.
pride themselves on being on being tight at the back, right? And that's the only thing they have basically. And without Kiai, they may not have even had that.
They're so bad. They're so bad.
Let's move on from Palace then. Let's just give it Chiarte, even though I'm very unconvinced.
Give it Kiai to the end of the season, mate.
Chelsea has to be Mason Mount.
I think
going to
you
go
should.
to war with anyone that says it's not Mason Mount.
I think, okay, counter argument to Mason Mount. I don't have an issue with Mason Mount, but if Mason Mount gets injured, Chelsea have a bunch of guys who could play in his position who are not embarrassing. In terms of value over replacement player, it's probably Mendy. Because the thing that stops...
Yeah.
If Kepa had played all season, Chelsea would probably not even be in touching distance of the top four. But they are, and now they're really good. And it's probably just because they've got a guy with hands in goal.
Yeah, but I do think that's just because of the drop-off is so large, like rather than
Yeah.
being so exceptional.
But that's important too. You know, like Chris said about Kouyaté, like if Kouyaté doesn't play centre-back, who plays centre-back for Palace? Well, if Mendy isn't in goal, who's in goal for Chelsea?
Petr Cech legitimately trained for about a week,
a guy
halfway through the season.
There's a guy they've hired a guy who literally can't throw or catch or kick.
But overall, yeah, just Mason Mount, like...
Yeah.
Honestly, just
I think that's fair.
It's a compelling counter. But if we're going like fully fit 11, Mason Mount is normally the match winner in this side, isn't he?
He's got to be the first name on the team sheet.
He's so well rounded. Like people kept asking me the other day, like, who do you prefer, Phil Foden or Mason Mount? And I think Phil Foden has a higher ceiling and like he's
more naturally gifted, Phil Foden, but Mason Mount is more well rounded.
On the eye. Exactly, Mason Mount is not going to do a bad job wherever you put him in that midfield.
Reliable.
And like I think that is a really undervalued quality for someone of his age and experience.
Yeah, and he is still creating massive amounts of chances this season, Mason Mount. And I know some of them have been set pieces, but he doesn't take every Chelsea set piece. And yeah, just every time you watch him play, he's the best player on the pitch. It doesn't matter what level it's at. So I think Mason Mount.
This isn't a peak Chelsea attack, is it? Like this is a Chelsea attack that's still.
There is still
questions.
There is still questions, isn't there? How you fit Mason Mount and Havertz and Ziyech into the same system, and it probably just isn't possible. But nevertheless, I don't think any of us at the start of the season, if you're honest at home, would have said that come. What are we now, midway through March, Mason Mount would have been the guy out of a Havertz, Ziyech, in that creative midfield role that was the outstanding player. I think Tuchel has kind of accepted that Mount is the guy there, and that's why Havertz is now being pushed into that 9 position. And I thought it was quite interesting when Tuchel last weekend said he didn't even see Havertz as a false 9, he just saw him as an out-and-out 9. So, I think shout-outs to Mason Mount is just getting better week in, week out. Burnley then.
Nice and quick.
That's easy. Pope. Yeah,
it's Nick Pope.
No one else.
Pope,
no one even deserves to be mentioned except for Pope.
No.
Yeah.
Terrible team.
Okay. Pope for Burnley. Brighton.
Bissouma.
I would go Lewis Dunk.
I think Dunk is fair. I think it's got to be Dunk or Bissouma, right?
It's got to be one of the two.
What makes you pick Bissouma over Dunk, Pat?
I just think that he does a really good job, like linking the defense and attack. Like he protects that defense really well, and the defense has actually been exceptional this season. Like the defense has been really unlucky to concede as many goals as it has done. But Bissouma also adds a little bit of progressive passing. He can beat a man on the dribble. He just seems to be absolutely everywhere in that side. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe as well, I just think he's more talented. And when I'm kind of at a bit of I'm stuck between two players, I think who's more likely to be the difference on the day? Probably Bissouma, but I have absolutely no issue with it being Dunk.
Yeah, I've said it a couple of times. I think Lewis Dunk could play for pretty much any team in the Premier League, and that's not me saying that he would start for Manchester City because that would be stupid because Laporte doesn't start, right? But he wouldn't look out of place at a Manchester City or a Liverpool. Every time I watch him, incredible levels of anticipation. He's forever covering whoever's playing left back, whether that be Burn or March.
Dan Burn.
and he's just shows incredible poise, to be honest. Like, he takes it under control in his own box. Like he most of his passes are progressive. They're normally breaking, lines or beating that high press. And he's just so pivotal. Him and Webster hadn't got injured. Webster has really impressed me this season. And just as well, because he actually cost a ton from Bristol, which I think people forget about. It's like 25 mil or something. But yeah, I'm gonna go Lewis Dunk, but I think Basuma, happy with Basuma as well.
All right, if I'm having the casting vote, I'll go Lewis Dunk as well. I'll go Lewis Dunk as well.
Basuma missed a little bit of time, right? I think that probably edges it.
Yeah.
I think there's only 30 minutes difference in time played between the two of them.
Oh, is
Basuma's played 2,214 minutes and Lewis Dunk's played 2,250. So there's only like 36 minutes difference.
Maybe it was cup competitions that Basuma was suspended for then, because he got that red, didn't he, earlier on in the season?
Yeah, he did. You're right. But very close either way. Let's move on to Aston Villa then. This one might cause a bit of debate because I think there is arguments for Emiliano Martinez and there's arguments for Jack Grealish. I'm going to come down on the side of the fence of Jack Grealish because without him over the last sort of 5-6 weeks, they just look totally devoid of any creativity going forward. So I will go with Jack Grealish, but you could probably say the same about Martinez if you were to drop him.
Yeah, the defence has really come on in the last year. Well, I say that. It came on and then it got worse again. Like it got really quite bad for a stretch of the season and nobody seemed to notice. But Martinez stayed good. So I think Martinez is quite a difference maker there. Like, I mean, he has saved them, 7 goals single-handedly, which is pretty amazing.
14 clean sheets is outrageous, isn't it?
That is unbelievable.
At Villa.
And it's not like you watch him and he's not busy. Like you see him actually doing stuff to keep those clean sheets. It's not like Ederson or Alisson getting them.
Yeah, he's earned them, right? This isn't like a case of Alisson winning Golden Clubs but only facing X amount of shots. Like Martinez is getting peppered.
Yeah. I mean, it's written down here that his 7.4 post-shot XG is the best in Europe's top 5 leagues, which is like pretty outstanding, isn't it, up against the likes of Jan Oblak and crew. But I'm still going to go Jack Grealish. Whenever you watch Villa, if he isn't playing, you're like, wow, they miss Grealish so bad. And he has still put up 16 goal involvements in the Prem, hasn't he? I think he shouldn't have signed the contract. I still think he shouldn't have signed the contract in the summer because he's just not going to be able to move. Why would Aston Villa sell him in the summer? I think he's stuck there, not playing European football for the next 2-3 years, which is just a nightmare for him. But I'm sure there's Villa fans watching this going, well, why would he want to move? He's playing for Villa, the boyo club. Playing Champions League, pretty important. Let's move on to Arsenal then, Pat. Final side, your boys. Bukayo, is it? Yeah,
I think it's the only option, really. Like, I mean, I struggle to see who else it could be. Like, Tierney's been good, but Tierney was out for quite a bit. And since Christmas, there were several times when Arsenal played with Cedric at left back, and Cedric individually is obviously a lot worse than Tierney, but the team wasn't much worse with him playing there. Like, we were absolutely fine. Bukayo Saka has been the player who dragged us through the autumn and has been much improved. I mean, the other thing you could do is maybe say someone like Smith Rowe, because Smith Rowe coming in enabled the team to play in a different way. And since Christmas, Arsenal have been the 4th best team in the Premier League, by the stats, and I'd say by the eye test as well, despite getting some unlucky bounces of the ball against Wolves
and some head losses.
Well, yeah. Though I mean, the Wolves thing, the Wolves thing, that would have been quite a significant difference because I think that probably would have been a win. But yeah, I think it's probably got to be Bukayo Saka, right?
Yeah, totally agree. I don't think there's anybody else who comes close to Bukayo Saka.
I mean, maybe Leno, but I don't think Leno's been the difference in the way Saka has.
No, I definitely agree. Should we do some quick fire questions then? Have you boys got the time? We'll rattle off a couple ones.
Yeah, sure. Man.
Yeah, just one or two.
All right, let's do a couple ones then. Let's start with this one, actually, Hamster, for you. Add the lad. Thoughts on Jesse Marsh being linked with the Celtic job? I saw him running his mouth this week, saying it's an honour.
I think a lot of people will be surprised at his apparent keenness, right, to join Celtic, saying it was an honour to be linked with the job, and then he sort of dropped the death knell that he'll review his situation at the end of the season, and there's still a lot of work to do in Austria, which is as clear a come-get-me plea as I think a manager in a permanent position can put out. I think it's smart from him. A lot of people will see what Brendan Rodgers has achieved since leaving Celtic and how he's he secured that job at Leicester and thinks Celtic is a great platform to get me a job in the top 10 of the Premier League, which is the holy grail for managers at the moment, right? All over the world. That's why Carlo Ancelotti took a job at Everton. But I think what's interesting about him is he's clearly very hung up on the culture of teams as well, right? And the club. I don't think he would just go to Celtic for 1 or 2 seasons, just to add an SPFL trophy to his cabinet in order to get a job at Southampton. I think he'd want to go there, overhaul the sort of maybe the youth setup as well, and he's really focused on improving individuals as well. So I think he'd be a good fit for Celtic in that regard. A lot of good raw young players in Scotland that get overlooked by the old firm because of this necessity to win, whereas I think he can probably pull off both. It's absolutely bizarre to see some Celtic fans turn their nose up at him because he's in the Austrian Bundesliga and he's American. So
yeah, I did see as well that you're hunting for a director of football as well, right?
Yeah.
So Jesse Marsh obviously proven to have worked in that sort of
Good
alongside directors of football and things, which is easier said than done. Finding a manager who's willing to let a director of football be involved in the thinking process. So
I suppose it helps when your director of football is Ralph Rangnick, right? But
yeah, definitely. All right, let's do one more quick one then. Let's keep this one nice and short. AVFC Raj says, pick a rogue shout for the England squad. So let's do one each. Pat, if you could pick one rogue player to be called up by Southgate and go.
God, one rogue player. I don't know. Does anyone else have one? Give me a moment to think.
I think Bellingham is a very solid candidate for this position. I don't think he's been called up to the under-21s for a reason. I think he might well be in the senior squad. But I'll go for Ezri Konsa. I think England can afford to take one rogue centre-back, especially if they're paying a back 5 or a back 3 of centre-backs. And I think Ezri Konsa's athleticism and interceptions stands him apart from the rest of England's centre-backs, which, Cody, Maguire, Stones, Michael Keane.
Cody'd be very fortunate to go.
Yeah, but I think he will go because I think Southgate will play a back 3. And I think they're all quite similar in the way they want to play, whereas Konsa, I think, is much more dynamic than everybody other than maybe John Stones in there. So I'll go either Konsa or Bellingham.
Maybe Ollie Watkins.
Ooh.
I think you need a striker who can do some of the stuff that Kane does if you need to rest Kane or if Kane gets injured, and that makes me think that an Ings or a Watkins would be good. I think Watkins has a bit more position.
So would you not take Tammy?
I would love to take Tammy, but he just hasn't played that much. He's played 1,000 minutes. That's really not very much. I would think about Tammy, but I think Watkins has played all season and he's just such a versatile threat, and he's more of a wide player as well when he needs to be. You can see him pull out wide, and as we know from his time in the Championship, he's a one-on-one threat. He's a good dribbler. I think that's
he's
quite
gas as well.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have in his squad. His combination of speed and size is quite unusual. Yeah. So maybe Watkins.
Hams, did you say one? Did you go Bellingham?
I'm just gonna go Bellingham, mate. Yeah.
All right, let's finish up with this personal one then from Siva the God. He says, rank all of these cuisines in order. Indian, Chinese, Spanish, Italian. It's too many.
Too many.
Do you know what? There's actually too many. I mean, we haven't got the time for it, have we? I'm going to
pick your top 5 out of them then, Tomlinson.
All right. A top 5 out of Indian, Chinese,
top 3.
Spanish.
Come on. Five is 5 out of 9.
Yeah. Top 3, I'll go Indian, Italian, and Mexican.
Oh, Mexican.
Gonna be my 3.
Throw that in there.
Yeah, Indian, Italian, and Mexican.
All right. Well, for me, this is really clear, so I'm just going to bash it out now. Indian, top, Mexican, then Italian.
So you go same 3 as me.
Is that the same for you?
Yeah.
Indian first. That does surprise me.
Pat?
I don't know. I can't do this, man. Indian, Indian and Chinese, it's just stupid. The India and China have the 2 deepest, broadest food cultures in the world.
So pick them 2 then. Pick those 2.
Well, no, because I haven't been to China, and Chinese food in China is notoriously very different from what it is here. I don't know. Like, I don't care, man. I love Mexican. Mexican's great. I'll put Mexican number 1. Why not? Even though I've always hated frijoles. I've absolutely despised them my whole life.
I don't even know what they are.
Refried beans.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, when you get them out of a can from El Paso, but when you go to a proper Mexican joint,
nah,
they are much better.
I've hated them my whole life. I hated them in Mexico. Like, no.
And by the way, I do actually want to put some respect on El Paso's, home kits, because the refried bean's not great, but otherwise, perfectly serviceable. I just
What would you have bottom?
Yeah, Italian. I just find it like it's
No, what would you have
super
bottom
hard to
of
elevate.
everything here?
Maybe
Oh,
Thai.
everything here.
Maybe Thai.
Yeah,
Oh,
a Thai
I think
curry
I'd
is
go
nice,
American,
but
Spanish isn't that great, to be honest with you.
nah. I tell you what, I think I do like Spanish, but
I
I
do like
think
a paella though.
yeah, but I think they're easy to get wrong, aren't they?
And
'Cause
there's a
people are
limited repertoire.
People are just chucking shit in a bowl with paella, like calling it paella, and really, there's more to it than that. Rather than just throwing like rice and prawns into the deepest pan you've got at home. But I disagree with. I think Thai bottom, because like burgers, like, a blue cheese burger that's well cooked, Tomlinson, with the right gherkins, with the right, the right amount of cheese. I think it's up there, man. It's top 5.
I do order a lot of burgers when I go to restaurants, but I'm just generally disappointed by everyone I eat. I don't know whatever it is. But I'd say like 8 out of 10 burgers are disappointing when you actually bite into them. But, all right, yeah. Let's just wrap it up there. I'm not going to lie. Let's finish up there. Anything you guys want to point to?
Head over to Football Daily Podcast for a surprise. Like, see,
Football Daily's podcast this week,
No,
I
it was-
believe, was about how much Thomas Tuchel's changed Chelsea.
Well, it was a roundup with Sam Abasaki, so we talked about Chelsea because obviously, like the change since Tuchel has come in has been really, really huge. And then we talked about the North London derby and how Jermaine Ginas had a breakdown because he's an idiot. Yeah, it was
Getting that in there last minute.
It was a good one all round.
All right, there we go. Hamster, anything to point to?
No, not really. I am going to bring one back, though, from a weekly basis from like mid-April onwards. But, taking a week or so off after this. So, bye.
All right, lovely stuff. Yeah, as we said at the start, if you want to find out more details about Footstock and join it, then hit the link in the description below, slamming the code Football Daily. That's all one word. Right, thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye.